views expressed on the following program of those of its hosts and participants in no way reflect those of the staff or management of WNRI.
This is Veterans News Radio, getting to the heart of Veterans Affairs. A program dedicated to unveiling the truth in a relentless pursuit of justice on behalf of veterans. Coming to you live from Rhode Island to the world with your host, High Speed Sal.
Dennis over here, my co-host, and tonight we have a special guest coming on. Name's Gregory Hoyt. He's from the children of Fort McClellan. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Anyway, he's got some stuff to say, and about the offspring of toxic veterans. Other than that, we've got This Week in Military History, which I'm going to turn the mic over to Dennis, which primarily he's going to eventually have to take this over. But anyway, go ahead, Dennis.
Good evening, folks. Today in military history, I know Sal doesn't seem to feel it's a little bit military history, but today Nixon went to China. I believe it was 72. And then, it's kind of a good thing. It's towards the end of the Vietnam War.
You mean the beginning of our sellout?
That too, but, relations with China also helped against communist forces in North Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
Today in history, also, the Third Indochina War started off between China and Vietnam itself. And
China kind of kicked them.
No,
the other way around.
Yeah, Vietnam kind of
did.
China bloody
really?
nose.
How did that happen?
I believe anti-Chinese sentiment was really behind that.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. So, who was there? The who?
Well, the Chinese were backing the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia.
Yeah.
And the Pol Pot regime. And Vietnam had entered into Cambodia and had annexed parts of Cambodia and claimed it for themselves. So it was really the beginning of the end of the Cambodian massacre under Pol Pot.
Why would China have gone after him? What were their thoughts?
China was backing the regime in Cambodia, which was slaughtering millions of Cambodians.
Now, was Russia also involved in this?
Russia was involved. They were backing the North Vietnamese and the Chinese.
As they did against us, too.
And the Chinese also were kind of in a Cold War a little bit, too, with the Russians believing that Russian sediment was leaking into Southeast Asia.
Interesting. Two communist countries.
Yeah.
Wow. How about that?
It's crazy how the political world can work.
Anyway, I know you got this hot off the presses from BBC today, or one of these days prior to today.
I believe it was this morning. Typhoon jets were actually scrambled this morning in...
Now, Typhoon jets, for those out there, they're the English or the British fighter jets.
The British version of an F-15,
right.
Pretty much.
Well, they're still kind of behind us, right?
Yeah. Well, the Typhoons have gone through their phases.
Yeah, they have.
But anyway, back to the point. They were scrambled this morning from RAF bases in England to escort a Tu-160 Bear out of English airspace.
Now, a Tu-160 Bear, those are bombers, aren't they? Long-range bombers?
It's a long-range bomber.
And they carry a lot in them?
Yes, they do.
Geez, I wonder, years ago, this is not in the military, this was while working with the government. I was at the Berlin Wall in 1989, somewhere thereabouts.
I'm sorry. correction. The Tu-160 is the Blackjack, the jet-powered Tupolev.
Well, that's still even worse. But anyway, and I still remember telling myself, well, geez, this is impossible.
And it was 2 Russian bombers.
The Cold War is not over, and it has not been over, and we should have never trusted them. But anyway, unfortunately, we made a big mistake, and I believe that we are soon going to be eating that mistake.
Well, I'm hopeful that this was a training accident gone awry, perhaps.
Really? How far away?
However, with a range of 12,000 kilometers on the Tu-160, you have to cross Poland, you have to cross Finland, you have to cross Iceland to get into UK airspace.
That was normal muscle flexing. I mean, Putin knows what he's doing. He's going back to the old days of, look at me, look what we can do. It's going to be quite interesting. I'm just, I feel, bad for our children and our children's children. I mean, this world needs to wake up. Sometimes I look around and I sometimes think we're living in that movie that was back in the 80s and 90s, Idiocracy. Man, that movie got it spot on, didn't it? Oh, man. I don't know if any of you guys out there, any of the listeners remember that movie, but if you don't, you need to go watch it, Idiocracy. Not that this is a, publicity for them, but you need to go watch it. You'll say, wow. And it's exactly what we're almost living in today. But anyway, other than that, here in Rhode Island, our illustrious Governor Gina Raimondo named a new Veteran Affairs Director for the state. Rhode Island has a new Director of Veterans Affairs. Governor Gina Raimondo has named Kazim Yarn, a U.S. Navy commander, to the post. Not only has he dedicated his entire life with 25 years of service to the United States Navy and rising to the level of lieutenant commander, his heart and his passion in Rhode Island, Governor Raimondo told the room of officials and veterans, including Rep. Bob Blanchard, Rep. Joseph Solomon, and Rep. David Bennett. Jan said the state's veterans deserves a Rhode Island that provides a welcome home with open arms and stands by their side as they transition into civilian life, seek educational opportunities, utilize the tools needed and competitive to their job search, and receive proper health care. Anyway, it's quite interesting. Proper health care. When's the last time you got proper health care from the VA? I'm sorry, I'm very upset at them.
It definitely needs reform, and there's some current issues going on with the Veterans Choice Program that definitely needs to be addressed.
Well, like they're not paying, and they're not contacting the people at the right time, or waiting for the time to be over. Isn't that what this was supposed to fix in the first place?
Yeah.
Yeah?
It was.
Anyway, we have our guest on. Welcome to WNRI. This is Veterans News Radio. You're on the air.
Okay, hi. This is Gregory Hoyt. I was welcomed on to come on to your show today.
Yeah, Greg, this is Sal. How are you?
Pretty good. Doing good.
That's good.
Yeah.
So we've talked a little bit. We know what's going on with the veterans themselves of Fort McClellan. I know most of the people know our story of the toxicity and what have you. But you're an offspring. You're a child of a veteran. And you also lived on base for a couple of years. Is that correct?
Yes. Well, we lived in Annis in actuality, and my dad worked on the base.
Mm-hmm.
And he was young. He was drafted in 1966, and he was only 18 at the time, and worked nearly 2 years at the base. And his job positions were he worked the golf course, and then he also worked a time and period at the movie theater, and so he did have some exposure, and then the exposure that I got, and we all did get, was from the PCB water there in Anniston.
Mm-hmm.
So, no, we held and had an Anniston address, and my dad worked on base, and so through the PCB that I received, which was really prenatal and postnatal due to the drinking water, and that therefore affected me. And then my father's exposure from possibly Agent Orange. We know it's some kind of dioxin poisoning that I had happened to me, and through my dad, through DNA mutation. And I have a lot of things that occurred from that. I have a psychiatric issue with a mental illness because of it. I've had skin issues all my life. Been on different medications for it. I'm currently on doxycycline to deal with the skin issues. And I, due to DNA mutation, my brother and I had a lot of bronchial infections growing up. And so I have a lot of scar tissue in my lungs, too, which I had a biopsy done in 2010, and it came back negative. And so I've lived with all of these issues, a lot during many years of my life. And it caused a lot of issues with dealing with the family and in my own support and self care. There was 3 occasions where I couldn't take care of myself, and I ended up living in a board and care where I was served food and shelter and my medication, and I lived amongst probably another 100 other patients, and it was like an outpatient type thing, kind of like living in a motel. But I lived there in 3 different times, 87 and a period of time in 1990, and then another period of time in 1995, and that was due to the mental illness. And doctors prescribed me Zyprexa today, which I've been taking for 15 years. And I've been stable, very stable for the past 20 years. And I give that due to the medications I take that help.
Right.
With that.
Well, let me ask you something, Greg. Have you gone to the government for help at all and let them know that this could possibly be caused because of certain types of exposure?
Well, I have not officially, because for one, like everybody knows and we all know, there is no real official, what you would call, notification. I haven't received anything in the mail. So there is no, and we don't have a health registry. That's why we're hoping for H.R. 2622 to pass, or some other bill of equivalent, that would help the veterans, children, and families of, because there are still a lot of sick ones like me. No, but my help that I went through was through my state of California came through with the burden. So therefore, they paid and took care of me with Medi-Cal, in which now I'm on Medicare and I'm on Social Security.
Right.
So I ended up getting help. If you look in the long run, the government ended up taking care of me anyways. And that's due to because I've been disabled for well over 20 years. Yeah,
but that's not the type of help that you or anyone else deserves either. I mean, they should really be... They should really be stepping up to the plate. Sorry to say that, but that's the way I feel, and that's the way I see with my own children as well as with many other veterans' children.
Well, we would like to know, and that's part of my group, and we all are all in wondering, why isn't there the help there? Why isn't the official notification from the Department of Defense to all children, family, and the veterans to let us know, hey, you need to go get tested? And then the types of testing. I run into where people don't even know, well, just give me a blood test. Well, there's different kinds of tests. You've got chronic exposure and acute exposure. It all depends on how long you were there and how long you were exposed, because some of these veterans were exposed with their boot camp, with their basic training. And then you've got folks with my dad who was severely exposed, I believe, in 1966 to 68. He got out of the Army. He was a sergeant in the U.S. Army, and he got out of the Army because he was in the midst of the Vietnam War, of course.
Yeah.
And there was, I hate to say this, but too many holes going through the bottom of the helicopters. They wanted my dad to go to aviation school and learn to fly helicopters, and he told them no, and he took an honorable discharge.
He probably would have been better off, huh?
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but stay away from that wretched place.
He did his time there and served honorably. Like I said, he was a sergeant, and he's got a supportive family, and we're real proud of him and that. But we've had to live with my illness. Plus, like I said, it affected my brother. Now we live with the bronchial problems. We live with the asthma. I have asthma. I've had inhalers prescribed to me, but I prefer to try not to. I, for one thing, I live up in the mountains, so I try to get as much of that mountain fresh air. And I had to get out of the city. I used to live in a city. I grew up in the city in San Jose, in the Bay Area there, in Silicon Valley. And that's where a lot of my family resided at one time. Now everybody's like my parents. They're both retired now. And they're still around, which is good. But like I said, it affected them, I think, and me too, and my family. But we've learned to adjust and to do the best. But it would be, please, if there'd be a way to find the notification to these folks. And it seems to me nowadays the only way we're getting the word out is like your show here, that's on the air, and through Facebook groups and whatever you can find online that has to do with Fort McClellan,
Well, in answer to your statement as far as getting the word out there, I do have some insight on that. Actually, this time last year, January 26, 2015, an email from one of the appointed Obama administrations declared to Congress that the Pentagon does not want to spend the money to alert hundreds of thousands of soldiers who served at the once contaminated Army base at Fort McClellan that they may have been exposed to toxins. The cost of attempting to identify all of these individuals, including the cost of media advertising, would be a significant burden on the Army's budget at this time. And that's from an official
Thank you,
U.S.
Elizabeth
government.
King. That was an email that was leaked.
Yeah.
The Pentagon's top liaison to Congress, Elizabeth King.
And guess where she's going next? She's going to be working with Jack Reed. She's going to be right here in our own backyard.
So that's the official statement from the Army as to why they have not awared you guys.
It's the money.
Yeah, so we all find out through health and sickness. And,
Right.
But half the time, the doctors don't even know what's wrong with you.
They don't. In fact, I've had blood tests done. That's, if you ask what else. The other thing is, you talk about notification. I officially didn't really kind of what you would say. I found out, which I had a gal from the Army who was passed in the Army previously. She's not in the Army any longer, but she was a Fort McClellan veteran who notified me and told me she was going around notifying people and veterans, letting them know of the exposure. And I did not realize or find out until July of 2014. So it hasn't even been 2 years that I've even known. It's been a short period of time that I've even known. You see, my father, like I said, he took an honorable discharge. We moved on. Our family, we grew up and lived in California. And, I've lost my thought that I was thinking about.
Moving on to California with your family?
Yeah, we've made the best of what we could with what we've got, what we had. And my father and I had spoken about Fort McClellan, and he would talk time to time, like at a family dinner or a gathering or something over the years. But we didn't really know about the amount of exposure and what all was going on there at Fort McClellan. And so even myself, I've become more aware in the past year and a half, almost 2 years, since July 2014, and studied up on this to find out, what's on YouTube about Fort McClellan? What's on that I could Google about Fort McClellan? All the information that I can, that I've gathered up. And then now, I'm trying the best that I can to locate a doctor, which I'm having difficulty finding a good private doctor to deal with the exposure, because it's obvious that I had PCB exposure, and then whatever exposure that my dad received via herbicides.
Right, and dioxin poisoning.
Toxic poisoning. One issue, too, is there's been only 3 veterans from Fort McClellan that actually been granted what you would call disability from toxic exposure at Fort McClellan. There's only been 3 individuals, and they've all been exposed to what would be herbicides. So it's a serious thing. Agent Orange has its own Facebook group, that is on Facebook, all in itself. And there are a large group of people that are involved in that group and in their discussions that they have. And like I said, I have my own, it's called Children of Fort McClellan Health Forum, and we're on Facebook. You can find us there. We kind of like screen people. We just don't let you join right away on there. We try to screen the people.
Tell me, what made you do something like this? What inspired you?
Because the amount of years that for one, I found out why I was ill, because I used to all blame it on, it was all hereditary, and, that I had an illness, and I took medication. I was one of the few in the family that was like this, and we always thought, I was just one of the odd ones. Well, no, turn around and find out that it's toxic exposure that my dad was exposed to and what I was exposed to while living in Anniston, Alabama, that made me feel like, hey, I need to get the word out to other people, because I have a story to tell too. I really do. I lived in the board and care home 3 different occasions. I've taken different psychiatric drugs. I've been on everything from lithium to Depakote, and I now take Zyprexa, which is a medication that I take, which I take 20 milligrams of Zyprexa daily, and that is enough medication to cause that they give people that are hallucinating profoundly. So it's a serious medication that I take that helps me, but it keeps me stable and it works for me. I've had some doctors have health concerns about those kind of medications, and I've also had concern because it does work on the liver a little bit too, and you have to take these medications.
Now, Greg, we have to take a short commercial break, but when we come back, I have an interesting side question for you for something that you had stated earlier. But yes. We've got to go to break for one moment, if you just bear with us, and we'll be right back.
Hang on, Greg. We'll be right back.
Veterans News Radio, brought to you by Mid-State Gun Company, 1200 Tioga Avenue in Cranston. They are a full-service firearms retailer for the state of Rhode Island. Mid-State offers a full line of firearms and accessories, from the industry classics to its latest innovations. They stock handguns, rifles, shotguns, and black powder. Their available accessories span from targets to cleaning supplies, cases to storage, ammo, mags, loaders, and more. Mid-State also buys, consigns, and trades firearms. And they also offer Rhode Island and blue card tests. Midstate Gun Company proudly presents to you Rhode Island's first public indoor firing range, including 12 25-yard rifle and pistol lanes. Come shoot in our safe and comfortable atmosphere. Midstate also offers a variety of classes and instruction. So whether you're new to the sport or a serious competitor, stop by Midstate Guns, 1200 Tioga Avenue in Cranston, Rhode Island, or call 401-615-0669. Open Monday through Saturday 9 to 9 and Sunday 10 to 5. Midstate Gun Company, proud sponsor of Veterans News Radio.
I'm retired United States Army Staff Sergeant Travis Mills. My motto has always been, never give up, never quit. That belief got me through high school, the Army, and my recovery. And it's a motto shared with my fellow veterans. They finished their military service, but they're not close to quitting. They're back home and ready to get to work. They've got what it takes. You can give them the opportunity. America's veterans. Hire the best. Access their experience with Easter Seals.
Hey.
Hi.
This game's supposed to be in Iraq. Is this what it looked like when you were over there?
Sort of.
Shoot, I died. I'll shut it off, okay?
Okay.
Grandpa called earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So, you want to watch TV?
Either way.
When a vet comes home, the silences can be deafening. You may not know what to say, but we can help start the conversation. Visit supportyourvet.org. A public service message brought to you by Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America and the Ad Council.
Let me ask you a question. When you think of the American Legion, what comes to mind? Is it the way we fight daily for our veterans to get them the benefits they've earned through their service?
I work hard every day to make sure that our veterans get the benefits they deserve. I am the American Legion.
For nearly 100 years, the American Legion has been our nation's leading advocate for veterans and their families.
I am the American Legion.
This is today's American Legion.
To learn more, visit legion.org.
Let me ask you a question. When you think of the American Legion, what comes to mind? Is it our assistance programs that help the spouses and children of our fallen soldiers keep food on the table?
I'm working to help the families of our fallen soldiers know that they are supported and taken care of. I am the American Legion.
For nearly 100 years, the American Legion has been our nation's leading advocate for veterans and their families.
I am the American Legion.
This is today's American Legion.
To learn more, visit legion.org.
Welcome back to Veterans News Radio. Gregory.
Yes, sir. Yes. Hi there.
So, Greg, you were saying earlier that you live in the mountains up in California. Now, is that the San Fernando Mountains down by 29 Palms, or are you in North Country?
In the northern part of the Sierra Nevada mountains.
Okay. Now, my question about that, because I'm also I'm a child of a Vietnam veteran who was exposed to Agent Orange, and myself, I was stationed in California in the Marine Corps. Have you noticed any health effects from your local drinking water, specifically in relation to grape country runoff water from Monsanto?
No, not here. I haven't experienced anything like that. Our local water here is pretty good. It comes from underground.
Okay, so you're higher above the runoff water then to not be into the groundwater, whereas us down in the southern part of California, we're being... I mean, obviously there's no tests to prove it, and the VA will never admit to it, but I firmly believe that our drinking water in Pendleton, in San Diego, and other Marine Corps bases in California were severely affected.
Oh, I have heard that, yes. No, I live closer to what you would call Lake Oroville.
Okay.
And have you heard of Oroville Dam, which is one of the largest or second largest man-made dams in the United States. That's where I live. I reside near Lake Oroville, and that's water for all down south, the farms. Of course, we've just gone through a 4-year drought. But you talk about, the basis and that, which really I don't understand why, if, like you said, the Pentagon does not want to give out any money or help, but they sure did help Camp Lejeune, which was a toxic water situation. And there's other bases, too, that have been or claimed to be infected, yes, by tainted water that I've heard. And this whole thing is really something that it would be really nice if they would just take heed and accept it and help these people. And, my family, my grandfather was a chief petty officer in the United States Navy from 1940 to 1962. And he served on the USS Hornet and fought in the Battle of Midway and things like that. And I followed in his footsteps. Not only that, my father, but I had a grandfather that was in the military, in the Navy, like I said. And so he served on ship, plus Korean War, and then got out in 1962. And and my family has continued to serve over the years, and we've protected this great country that we do have, the United States.
Right, and then we come home and faced with this and put to the wayside and forgotten about.
Yeah, and what's really, it's not even just at home. Yeah, I mean, it's not only did it happen overseas or maybe in Vietnam, Agent Orange was used and that, but it was also used at Fort McClellan. I hope people understand that there was a lot of things that went on at the base.
And whatever wasn't used to get rid of was outright buried.
Buried or dumped.
Right.
Yes. And there's proof of this. This is why it's now a Superfund area. And even the federal government uses it. The National Guard trains on it.
No,
they train troops on it.
We touched, they're still using it as an auxiliary training base. I believe half of it is still open, whereas the other half has been shut down.
Yeah.
But half is still being used by contractors to train troops.
Now, who litigates what's good land, what's not toxic, or what is, and where it got dumped and where it didn't?
Well,
I mean, this whole thing is really something, and it seems to me that there is some government push-off on this, that they go ahead and they build retirement homes on the land now. They're building on top of the base. There's areas on the base where they're building in 2016 right now.
Well,
and people...
It's interesting that you talk about who dictates what is usable land and what is toxic land when the EPA, correct me if I'm wrong, but the EPA still reminds the residents of Anniston not to go outside without a face mask if they're going to mow their lawn, to not let their children play outside for more than a half an hour a day because of exposures in the grass and in the ground and in the water.
And let me remind you, the Fort McClellan, the base, the large and that great Army base that it was closed by the EPA in 1999.
Right.
And they brushed that off, too, kind of making it sound like it was just Clinton. It may have been on President Clinton's, one of his closure lists. I don't know, because they did close a lot of bases around that period of time in that era. And so, like I said, my family, and currently I even have a nephew currently in the Navy, active duty. So we still support this great country. And, it's been, I was never well enough to serve. I wanted to. There was a time when I was before I really got seriously ill. I got ill in 1986. I really became psychiatrically needed help at that period of time. And but before that time, when I was 17, I was hot and ready to go. I wanted to join the Navy. I was very athletic. My brother and I played sports. Don't get me wrong. I was one of those boys where my parents pushed us to get out and play sports and to get the fresh air, after school. And then we played athletics. We both played baseball and we played football. I played Pop Warner football. So I managed to do that, and it was a fun thing to do. But then I've had, like I said, the illnesses I've lived with. And then I find out there's other people. I'm not the only one with with the psychiatric problems. There's other people, too, from Agent Orange that have that issues. And some of these other children and vets that have served at Fort McClellan all have some of the same issues.
And the very unfortunate part is that the CDC and the VA and the federal government as a whole only admits to a certain handful of genetically passed on traits from parents that were exposed to Agent Orange, such as spina bifida and a few other things. But primarily, they're leaving people like us at the wayside, you and me. Because I also fall into the same boat with problems, but can't really, substantiate these problems without CDC approval.
Well, that's what you're supposed to follow, yes.
Right.
And we all do. You would have trust in that, yes.
And the funny thing is, back in 2003, and I don't know if you know this, Gregory, but Aniston actually sued Monsanto as a corporation and was paid $700 million in a settlement from Monsanto to the people of Aniston, and the military has seen squat of that. They have gotten nothing.
They're not going to, I don't believe.
So what my question is, from a government standpoint, and if you look at any settlements that go through the Supreme Court, past or present, they go by case law. And case law here dictates that paying the town of Aniston $700 million is a backhanded admission of guilt.
It is, and it really didn't solve anything. It didn't really help Aniston. What did they open? A clinic and a few things and tried to clean up some of it. They've got a whole cleanup thing, And, it's really something, too, the way that they at one time used to handle nerve agents and warheads and the chemicals and and how it was handled. Nowadays, even today, I posted in my group, on a Facebook group, about PILA, which is Aniston Army Depot now, and where they, and other places around the country, where they dismantle warheads, and they do it very scientifically now and carefully. It's all done robotically. Some of it's handled robotically. It's not even handled by a man any longer. So they do these things differently than they used to. And it's really something. A lot of these videos you can find on YouTube. I even found that's where I found it today.
Well, we were talking earlier about Miss Elizabeth King, the Pentagon's top liaison, that wrote said email saying it was going to be too costly of a thing to aware Aniston veterans and their families. Miss King responded to Representative Tonko. I'm sure that name rings a bell for you. Representative Tonko had introduced a bill about Fort McClellan and the Registries Act. I believe back then it was House Resolution 411. I'm not sure about the bill number now, but Ms. King's response to Mr. Tonko's efforts said that she places the blame more on polychlorinated biphenyls rather than the Army's use of chemical weapons. So she is admitting in her own email that PCBs were active at Fort McClellan, and yet the VA does nothing.
Yeah, and there's a lot of sick veterans from that kind of exposure. There's what really gets me is why would then there be all these people that serve there, these veterans, children, and families, all come down with these type of illnesses that are all similar, and it's one of the top ones is diabetes, and then, of course, cancer and leukemia and so on. We had one of my group friend members on Facebook just lost his brother due to leukemia from exposure. It hits everyone from the base that served there and lived around there. And it's just really something the way, like we say, there's no accountability to speak of. And it's really a shame. It really saddens me, but it keeps me going. It makes me say, hey, until we get justice, until we get the message out to everyone that they need to get, for one, they need to get tested. And you know what? I'm not a doctor, nor am I an official on what you should get tested for, but I would say that you want to consult your doctor and get checked up on, check your liver functions, your blood, what's your white cell count. And then, like I said, there's different exposures. It may have been a chronic exposure, like my father's, or it may have been an
genetic
exposure.
Right.
Yeah, or one that just was only a few weeks long that you were exposed to. But and then, you know, I've also there's more than just one or two stories. There's numerous stories I hear of other veterans that served at Fort McClellan while they were on the base.
Now, Greg, you've heard these stories from other groups, right?
Yes, and from other veterans. Yeah, Ted McFinn.
Methvin.
He was
Methvin,
one
yeah.
person. He's a toxic veteran from there, and I think he may have been on your show before.
Yeah, he has.
Yeah, and he knows of the water, of how bad it was, and other veterans that he knows and heard of, and we've heard of, that were sick while training.
Right.
You know, they suddenly got ill.
Here's the problem, though. I have a big problem, and my problem is this.
Yeah.
I know you know more or less that we turn around, and I've done a lot of work going to Washington and everything else. Done a lot with Congress. We've gotten somewhere, even though we're not far enough, but we're still somewhere.
Yeah.
I had a chance to go back down again next week. We tried to ask for help from the different groups and everything else. We did get some help, but not much.
Yeah.
Can't go. My problem is, is everybody going to be a couch activist and not want to do anything about it? Or is everybody going to try to think that I'm trying to take, all the credit for this? Because never once have I mentioned myself on any of this stuff.
Well, it's a situation where I think we have the support. It's just you have people you're dealing with that are ill. Finding out there's a lot of
okay, we're ill. I understand that. I'm ill. There's a lot of other people that are ill that have also done stuff.
There's been toxic
stupid things like this. I mean, $5 or something like that could have been very helpful. Unfortunately, we're not going anywhere. And I find a great deal of animosity amongst all the groups.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've run into the same problem, and I was quite interested in asking you this, because I really think that either we all get together or we all go home.
I think we could get everybody together as a whole if we knew that we had enough support. But there's not even enough support amongst congressmen. We can't even get...
Okay, so this is what's going on, just to, let you know as well as our listeners out there know.
Yeah.
Last January, I was in D.C. In fact, they did a little march and everything else. Not many people showed up, but the people who did show up, wonderful, wonderful people. A lot of them were sick, who's got MS, who had all sorts of other conditions that were really bad. I had just had my thyroid taken out, in fact.
Yeah.
I didn't go down for the march, but I went down to speak to a congressman who was VA budgetary. And we brought up a proposal. If you don't want to do the Health Registry Act, or if we're going to keep fighting on this, you guys should at least do something like maybe a web page or something. Well, I was promised 6 weeks later that I was promised that within 6 weeks they had a VA budgetary meeting from the time I was there, that something would be done. And I'll tell you what, something was done. They did do a page on the VA public health site for Fort McClellan. Yes, it could have been somewhat flawed. They have been changing it a little bit here and there. I know because I've gotten in touch with these people myself. Telling them, no, that's wrong. You gotta include the rest of the stuff, and here's the proof. And they've actually done that. So I have had the help.
Are you saying, though, that that's some help, but then the VA, which also has maybe on their site, which they posted a potential, they won't...
Well, that's the one I'm talking about. That's the one I'm talking about, but that's a beginning.
That was a potential. That wasn't an absolute. There has been no absolutes of any of this.
No, there hasn't.
I think that's what down draws people, and that's what's the real disappointment.
But this is what we're trying to do, and that's why I've been trying to get back down there again to fix this. In fact, we've gotten some things changed already.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
And the results are hard to get. They're hard to get good results. I mean, it's hard to get, and it's hard to keep people positive, especially people that don't feel well.
Yeah.
And
trust me, I know, because I've been in the same boat.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Well, we've all got to stick together. We've all got to work together.
And that's what I ask everyone.
Yes.
No, Greg, if you could tell some listeners that might just be listening in, could you plug your site again, please?
Yes. Oh, my.
How people could get a hold of you?
Oh, yes. On Facebook, you can find me on Children of Fort McClellan, Alabama Health Forum.
Okay.
And I'm on Facebook. And then my email is gregory.hoyt2917@comcast.net. Those are the two ways to reach me.
All right, great. Great. Well,
it was a great honor to do this show, and I hope someday that I can be invited again. And
oh, you will be. We'll be doing follow-ups. In fact, it was my pleasure to have you on. And
yes, it was very enjoyable to get the message out. I would like and hope that other people don't give up and they keep their thumb up. I try every day to wake up and hope that we're going to find results, but it's one thing at a time, you know.
Well, thank you very much for coming on tonight, Gregory.
Thank you for inviting me.
Have a great night.
Have a good night, brother.
You too. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow. There's all sorts of information there from children themselves. I remember once I had Kelly on from, you were on, in fact, with me at the time when we were at BOB. Yeah.
COVVH.
Yeah. It's quite an interesting situation with all this. I just wish people would just
That's actually where I was
stick
pulling
together.
up all these emails from Elizabeth King, is Kelly's website.
Yeah. Yeah, Elizabeth King. That's another one. But anyway, I am going to
I also
come back
found
again.
something here interesting about, while you were stepped out of the office, we were discussing about how Miss King admits to PCBs at Fort McClellan, but denies anything on Tomco's bill about the Army's chemical weapons. However, I'm reading down here that, as you know, Solutia was tasked with cleaning up Fort McClellan, and Solutia therefore went bankrupt in the $50 million cleanup process. However, in a 2008 report from the Federal Health Agency, said that there is no apparent public health hazard at Anniston, Alabama. However, the flyover of the park that is now in place of half of the base, from a elevation of 10,000 feet over the park by aircraft, the readings are still showing high presence of soil contamination with cesium and cobalt.
Yeah.
They're getting radiological readings at 10,000 feet above
Sure they are.
the ground.
Sure they are.
That is a hot sell.
Of course it is. Of course it is. The whole thing was. But anyway, that's enough for this week. I am going to ask everyone out there, or plead with everyone out there, to go to poisonveterans.org. We kind of need everybody's help. We need to stay together on this. I mean, as an MP, our saying and our motto was always of the troops, for the troops. I feel that we still need to do of the troops, for the troops. I still have a lot of fight in me, and I'm ready to go. And I'm not going to let these jerks get away with it. Let's put it that way. But anyway, this is High Speed Sal.
And this is Devil Dog Dennis. We are signing out for the night.
We're out of here. Everybody watch your sixes and, full steam ahead. We'll talk to you next week. Thank you very much.